Hey, business building warrior, welcome to Silent Sales Machine Radio. I've got a treat for you today. If you listen to our show regularly, it's a little unusual that we would have someone on the show as a guest who isn't one of our proven Amazon course success stories. That's what most of our episodes are. It's either instruction about how to build a successful business on Amazon or Walmart, or it's an interview with one of our successful coaching students or training students. Today, however, I'm with Yoda Yi. He's the founder of ThreeColts, and he's built an incredible company. They've, as he'll explain, I'm not going to go too much into detail now, but they've compiled a bunch of different software tools under one roof, under one umbrella for a very low price. And we'll stick a link in the show notes today where you can go check out what they've done. Primarily, a lot of resellers. They serve all sellers, but primarily resellers. And he has an interesting perspective on the industry because this guy has enough of a user base that he's invited out to Amazon headquarters. He has conversations with them. He's speaking as an advocate on behalf of Amazon sellers. So good news. There are people out there that Amazon is listening to. Hi, Amazon. If you're listening to our show today, I know there's a lot of people at Amazon at corporate who listen to our show, pay attention to our community. It's great to have another voice that's being paid attention to. So Yoda's going to share some of the things that he's seeing as he's interacting with Amazon headquarters on behalf of resellers, some of the policy changes that he's seen, some of the things that he saw coming down the road that he warned us all about and we warned you about as a result. So we love being in alignment with other leaders in the industry who see and understand the fact that Amazon has a very bright future for those of us who are resellers. And there's a lot of good news for those of us who are in this business, filling Amazon's shelves with products that aren't ours, reselling. You know, I coined a phrase today. You'll hear that portion of the show. It might be one of your favorite parts of the show as you listen through this. I call it COVID 2.0. Of course, none of us want to go through COVID again, but the effect that COVID had on the reselling opportunity is well documented. I didn't realize that Yoda had recently written an article where we are in a complete alignment on this topic. Now, I'll stick a link to his article here in the show notes. He's promised he'd send me a copy of it. I haven't even seen it yet as I'm recording this introduction. But he said the effect that tariffs are going to have on the reselling opportunity on Amazon and all other platforms is going to be huge. It already is. We're already seeing evidence of that. So this is me sounding the alarm bell. When COVID hit, we were nervous, but then we saw the evidence of what happens when there's a lot of price disparity and there's some delays and different products aren't being delivered where they should be on time. That creates massive opportunity for resellers. A lot of resellers made a killing 2020 to 2022. It's getting ready to happen again. It already is. It's nice to have another expert in the industry who's seeing the same things I'm seeing. We validate each other's observations. It's just a fun conversation, even the off-air conversation with some details I can't wait to share with you later. I can't yet at Liberty. I think there's some cool things happening between ThreeColts and our community around here. They're going to be at our conference. We spent some time talking about today. So theprovenconference.com is the website. It's in the show notes today. That link again, theprovenconference.com. Yoda, the CEO of a 500-person company that has software tools for all kinds of different Amazon services that you may need as a reseller, as a seller. He's coming to our event. They love our community. They love what we're all about. They don't do a lot of events, but they're coming to ours. And I think you're going to really enjoy hearing from the perspective of a guy who serves a similar audience to who we speak to on this podcast. Small Amazon sellers. They're growing significant businesses. That's what we do here. That's what Yoda does at ThreeColts. Come to the conference. I'm going to say it in the episode today as well as I'll say it right now. If you're skeptical, if you're uncertain, if funds are a little tight, can we please bless you with free admission to our conference? We've had great sponsors such as Yoda, who you're about to meet with ThreeColts, who have made this event possible. We've paid the bills. We're going to at least break even, if not make a little bit of money off this thing. So we're ready to say, hey, come one, come all, come to the event. Rooms are only $109 per night at this resort. Ridiculously reduced rate. Hundreds of great sellers, many of whom have built incredible businesses and many of whom are brand new, are going to be at this event in Orlando the last 3 days of May of 2025. Be there. Do not miss this event. And Yoda is going to be there with us doing some presentations and one of the great sponsors. So let's get over and spend some time now with my friend Yoda Yi. Every time I spend some time with this guy, we've got more stuff to talk about. And it's all about serving you and helping you build a beautiful, successful business. Enjoy this episode. So Yoda, good to see you again, my friend.
Good to see you as well.
Thanks for coming back on the show, and can't wait to get into your story. You know, I've corresponded with you a few times back and forth, but I don't know a lot about your story. So I'm looking forward to it. And let's start there maybe.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, thanks for having me on. This is my second ever podcast. And so I'm just getting started in this podcast realm. So I'm Yoda. I founded ThreeColts, but before ThreeColts, I was actually in the Amazon space back in 2014. So it's been a little bit over 10 years. I started off as working on the Amazon team back in Seattle in 2014, launched in Canada and Mexico in the North American expansion team.
Wow.
And then in a couple of years after, I switched over to launching Amazon Fresh and Prime Now. This was when Amazon Fresh was still in 4 fulfillment centers. Prime Now didn't exist yet. And funny enough, Prime Now no longer exists. So it's a full circle moment. But we got to expand to dozens of different warehouses. And this was the first time I got to go into a warehouse, pick, pack, and ship, understand the inbound process, the outbound process, and can understand and feel the pain on the Amazon side for all of their lost inbound that they have, because we used to always joke that Amazon is the greatest donator of goods because of all the lost inbound packages that had to be shipped out of the warehouse. At the time, I don't think I understood what was going on. Now, fast forward 10 years later, and I'm working directly with sellers, and Amazon's always losing their packages. I can now understand the pain that both the sellers go through and what Amazon goes through. But that's kind of what my first few years looked like. Then I moved over to the London office where I was rolling out their API throughout Europe. And so this is the first time I got to work with software partners. And funny enough, like fast forward a couple years later, as I was building out ThreeColts and starting to acquire businesses, I was talking to the same companies that I had helped onboard onto the API. And so been around the space and since then founded ThreeColts and been doing this for about 4 years. Our team is now 500 strong worldwide. We've acquired 25 different businesses, anything from software to publication. We also have Camel, which is a price tracking software primarily for consumer. And so we've covered quite a bit of ground, but that's a little bit of my background in the Amazon space.
That's incredible. You guys are 500 strong now. I didn't realize that. That's awesome, dude.
Yeah, it was an incredible growth because that first year was 2021.
Yeah.
And as you could pull yourself into that market boom that was going on in 2021, where we were surrounded by FBA aggregators and there was a lot more capital in the markets. Obviously, the stock market was booming. And we were able to go out and finance and fundraise for our idea to say, hey, let's do something for software. But we only had 20 of us then. About a year after, maybe grew that to 80 or so. Then that's when it started aggressively growing to 200, then 500 in a matter of a few years.
That's
so now we have offices throughout the world, and it's been a fun ride. It's obviously been challenging as someone that's never managed 500 people. I've had to relearn what it's like to be not just a manager but a leader throughout. But it's been a fun journey, and I learn something new almost every day.
Oh, you have to. Yeah. Yeah. Especially in the industry we're in. But as a leader of a company that's grown that rapidly, I got to imagine we could probably do a whole nother podcast episode about how you go from 10 to 500 that fast and not go crazy.
Oh, there are plenty of days where I'm going crazy.
Yeah, I can imagine. Wow. Such an impressive story, man. Every time I've encountered you and learned a little bit more about you, I'm more impressed. Well done, man. I love it. So I'm going to put you through a little test, man. I didn't give you any warning on this. All right. So you guys have acquired a lot of companies. ThreeColts is kind of an aggregate of some of the other great software tools in the industry. Rattle off for me. I don't know if you're going to do all of them, but just rattle some off. It's going to be some things that people recognize. You already dropped a couple on us, but just rattle me through the list.
Yeah. So we have Tactical Arbitrage, Inventory Lab, which are probably the two that will be known amongst your listener base the most. Scout IQ is also retail arbitrage software that we're completely rebranding, as well as bringing in new algorithms too. Feedback Wiz, which is primarily known, I would say, with private label, but there's a lot of resellers that use that tool now as a part of Seller 365. We acquired a couple others that bolstered some other products. So a good example of this is like BindWise went into Feedback Wiz to improve and bolster the alerts function, making it faster, easier, simpler, more navigatable. And then on the accounting side, we've gone into analytics. Feedback Wiz has like kind of parsed out an analytics platform above and beyond that. But we also have a whole segment of products that don't service sellers, but mostly enterprise brands. So about a little bit over half our revenue comes from companies like L'Oreal, Samsung, Keurig Dr. Pepper. And we have 6 to 7 figure kind of contracts with them to do a whole host of different things. Just like Seller 365 services, the seller base, we kind of have an enterprise package. And so that's where we've actually consolidated a bunch of products that you may or may not know the names of into 2 core product offerings, Margin Pro and Multi-Channel Pro. And by the name, you can probably imagine what they do. One improves your margin across the board, whether it's in parcel delivery or recoveries or deduction management, chargebacks. In the Multi-Channel Pro range, we acquired 3 or 4 different products: Channel Reply, On-Site, Hemi, Said Commerce, that helps a seller or a vendor really go multi-channel and manage those operations, those complex operations, with custom integrations to your WMS, custom integrations to your 3PL or your warehouse, as well as integrations into dozens of different retailers, whether it's Amazon, Walmart, eBay being the major ones. But as you go into Europe, it's a lot more fragmented, right? So you have Argos in the UK, Sainsbury's in the UK, Tesco's in the UK. You have Cdiscount in France, bol.com in the Netherlands, Otto in Germany. And so we cover a really, really wide range of
You're interfacing with all those different systems as an attempt to, we have a lot in common as I'm listening to you describe Yoda, because you're trying to be as much as you can of a one-stop shop software solution for a wide range of e-commerce sellers, right?
Yep.
I'm doing the same thing, except insert education where you insert software.
Yeah.
Right? Like we really do everything from total green newbies. We got you. Yeah, let's get you up and ramped up, all the way up to some household name brands that we've been the educational resource to help them make good decisions and navigate Amazon, the right way.
And
So
I think this is why, like, ever since we first met, and then if you remember, like, we met out in Seattle at our booth, I think we've had such a good set of conversations because we have so much in common, but just in parallel spaces. And so it's been great to learn from you as well and what you guys have been building.
Yeah, we probably need to start our own little mastermind and hang out a little more, man, because I'm sure I could maybe teach you a few things, having done this for a couple of decades, and you could teach me some new things, get me up to speed on the stuff I'm missing that's right under my nose. So yeah, we need to hang out more, man. But man, I'm so excited to see what you've built, how fast you've built it. But let's talk about specifically for the listener's sake today, not the stuff that I'm interested in hearing from you, but let's serve the listeners. How are you working with Amazon? Well, let's start here. What do you want our sellers to hear before we talk about how you're working with Amazon? Because I want to hear you're interacting with Amazon in a way I'm excited to hear about. But let's make sure we don't skip over how are you serving sellers, like primarily our audience, resellers who are considering private label, dipping their toes in. Like, get real specific and go ahead and do the sales pitch, man. Like, what do you guys do for sellers specifically?
So we provide end-to-end reseller software operations, right? And the way we think about our software is that we want to be the back-end infrastructure for any resellers out there, whether you are just getting started or a professional reseller as large as a publicly traded company. And so we service a really, really wide range of resellers.
Are there resellers that are publicly traded companies?
Yeah, there's Spartan Nash.
Okay. Yeah.
KeHe's not publicly traded, but Spartan Nash is publicly traded. I mean, if you think about it, the term reselling, it's funny because I was just talking to someone about this. Amazon is a reseller themselves. Walmart is a reseller themselves. Costco is a reseller themselves. These guys are all resellers in some way, shape, or form. They also provide a platform for resellers to operate in. But I think the term reselling for a small guy they might rephrase it to retail arbitrage and online arbitrage. And if you're a little bit bigger, they might rephrase it to wholesale. If you're a little bit bigger than that, you might be considered retail. And then if you're just like a point solution between a brand and retail, you might be called a distributor, right? But
Right.
at the
But it's
end of the
still a
day,
reseller. Yeah. Are you
you're a
selling your own
reseller.
products or are you selling someone else's products? If you're
Exactly.
not selling your own brand under your own label with your own team of lawyers protecting it, well, you're a reseller.
100%.
Right.
And I think the word reseller is misunderstood by so many people. And I think the competitive edge long term for a reseller isn't how do you generate brand strength, but actually how do you provide value to the end customer and or the retailer that you're servicing it through, right? When I was working at Amazon, we would work with a lot of different distributors, KeHE, UNFI, all of these guys that would bring in grocery products for Amazon across many, many different brands because Amazon needed the selection across many different brands, and having to call up Procter and Gamble and these guys one by one was actually very laborious work. And working with distributors and resellers has been a phenomenal kind of perspective to be like, okay, the main focus is speed, value, and nimbleness, right? And if you can provide
Yes.
that to a retailer or an end consumer, then you're going to be able to be successful.
Nimble. You just added a new word to my vocabulary, nimbleness. We call it not overcommitting. We call it being ready to pivot. We call it not going all in, inch deep, mile wide.
Yeah.
Nimbleness, right? We're going to move product from point A to point B to provide value to the end consumer. And tomorrow it may be a completely different catalog because
100%.
that's the way the wind is blowing. That's the reseller game. Yeah. You're not going to find that one magic product you can just lock onto for years as a reseller. It just at any level.
I agree. And this is even if you're publicly traded, right? If I'm a Spartan Nash or UNFI and I'm trading directly with Amazon, right? Amazon's eventually going to want to go direct, right? And that's going to be the long-term risk. So they need to make sure that their selection is broad, wide, that they can do value-added services. So a good example of this is at one point, Amazon wanted single unit packs of bars, right? But Quest bars and all of the Kind bars guys, they're like, no, you have to buy them in case packs and packs of 12 in each case pack, right? And so they're a lot more rigid, whereas the distributor that came in was like, no, we can provide you value. We can break these down for you. We will break these
Right.
down for you. We will relabel these
Right.
for you. We will do what you guys need and we will charge you a service for this, but we can do it. And
Yes.
I think that level of like flexibility and nimbleness creates immense amount of value for retailers and platforms that I think is misunderstood by the broader e-commerce landscape because if you look at social media, you have like the private label guys, you have the reseller guys that always go back and forth about various business models. Ultimately, both business models are valid.
Mm-hmm.
The value proposition and like the positioning, very different. What you
Yes.
focus on, very different.
Yeah. And from my perspective, I've been in this game for a couple decades now and just kind of sitting back with a front row seat. The reselling game, all things being equal, just kind of sitting back and being honest, has been the stable playground to be in. If you had to pick one place to play for 20 years, starting 20 years ago, and said, okay, you're either going to launch brands or you're going to be in the resale game, which one is going to, play out? Now, there's some people who've made a lot of money in private label brands, but there's also a lot of people who have lost a lot of money trying to launch their own brands, right? It's one observation I make. So if you're ready to play with the big boys and roll the dice and potentially lose a lot of money, okay, launch your brand. But I don't know of anyone who's lost a ton of money in the reselling game. I just don't, unless they got stupid. They lost their nimbleness, to use your word. They went, instead of going inch deep, mile wide, they went mile deep on, one brand or whatever, right? Those guys can get themselves in a little bit of trouble, but you can still liquidate it other places ultimately. So it's a really stable playground to be in. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Did I ever tell you about the conversation I had with a senior VP at Amazon? I mean, that's as high as it gets in the food chain without talking to Bezos, right?
Yep.
They invited me to lunch out to Seattle. And what he told me during that meeting, because we taught a lot of people how to sell on the platform and they wanted to meet me, right? This has been a few years ago, but he said, thank you for doing what you do. Specifically, you fill the shelves in our warehouses better than we'll ever be able to ourselves. That's the role we play, right? I mean, if they're selling 10,000 units a month, yeah, Amazon's probably going to hop on it. If they need 25 units a month to keep that category, to keep that product on the shelf and people want it and keep them competitive, that long tail, man, that's where we come. And we're playing a vital role and they know it. They know it. They don't always show the appreciation that I wish they would. And maybe that's something you and I can brainstorm together. I'm like, man, just show a little love every now and then, man. Like show it, throw us a bone, right? I'm sure you felt that pressure too from your community. of users, but we play a
Yeah.
vital role. And the future is bright from my vantage point.
I think reselling will always have a vital role in selection expansion, right? And if you look at the history of Amazon, even on the retail side, the 1P side, when they use distributors versus go brand direct, they still use distributors for brands that they go direct with. And the reason for that is because sometimes you have minimum order quantities and case pack quantities that are lower if you go through distributors, right? And I think you have the same corollary in the 3P world, where you have the top 3P sellers, they're going to pull into 1P, right? And they want to have direct control because it has great distribution, it has great volume. But as you go deeper in, Amazon will always rely on both distributors and wholesalers and resellers more broadly to expand that selection. But it's always, I think the constant has always been like your top 100, top 1,000 ASINs will always be at risk, obviously, because Amazon's going to want to control that perception. We used to have this concept called super image competitors when we were at Amazon. So Walmart was a super image competitor. If they had a blockbuster deal, Amazon had to match that because the perception that it creates to consumers, if our Barbie Dreamhouse doll is $100 more expensive than Walmart's, is catastrophic from a brand perception perspective.
Right.
And this is
They'll
why
suppress the buy box before they'll let that happen.
exactly. I think they've probably expanded this definition of like what super image competitor is, maybe a little bit too broadly, perhaps, and maybe a little bit too acutely. And this is something that we want to talk to Amazon about. But yeah, that's how they think, right? So with all of like the high velocity ASINs that I think resellers can make a lucrative killing on for short periods of time will always be also the most unstable longer term. Whereas the long tail, like you said, is always going to be the most stable 100% of the time. And Amazon's always going to rely on resellers for that.
I think you'll be interested in this. Have you ever heard my definition of what a suppressed buy box means on Amazon?
No,
Have you
what
ever
is
heard me
it?
describe? Here's how I train sellers to think of a suppressed buy box. It's Amazon's way of saying we do not like the price that shoppers are willing to pay for this item. Please send us more. That's because a lot of people will hop off and go, oh, it's a suppressed buy box. That's bad. No, that's good. That's good. I mean, there's margin there. That means there's margin. As long as Amazon doesn't, force the price down on you, which they will do on some of the most popular items. But some of our best products are suppressed buy box because customers are willing to pay more. A lot of people don't care that they're about to pay more. They want the convenience, right? So that's why my pushback with Amazon would be let the free market do what it's going to do. People are paying for convenience. Sure, have your loss leaders with those top 1% Barbie dream house that every kid wants for Christmas. Yeah, have fun with that with top 1%. But don't filter down those price controls all the way down to the catalog where suddenly, you're pulling the rug out from underneath the feet of the resellers who are trying to keep the shelves filled and make a living doing it. But great stuff. You and I could riff all day on this stuff, man. We're seeing the world through a very similar lens. This is my most exciting, the part I'm most excited about at today's show. I saw it on our lineup of stuff we're going to hit. And I said, okay, I want to hear Yoda talk about this. How are you working with Amazon to improve sellers' businesses right now? And then I want to talk about Seller 365 before I let you get away too.
Yeah. So because of our scale at ThreeColts, we work with about 30,000 paying customers worldwide. Amazon has invited us to meet with various leadership members throughout the last few years, to be honest with you. We knew about the new workflow change as well as Amazon's kind of impending suspensions in respect to gaming shipments a year, 6 months to a year earlier than they started enforcing. We tried to warn people out in the socials that this was coming. And it's funny because a lot of people pushed back on me. And then 2 months later, Amazon sent out the email, updated terms and conditions, and started suspending the top offenders.
We saw that coming too, mile away, by the way. We do not game the shipping plan system. We had the people approaching us trying to sell their software that would help game the system. Like, nope, not touching that with a 10-foot pole. Yeah, we made the right call. We need to stay in touch on those kind of things so I can help communicate those things out too.
100%. And that was the first time I actually started going into the socials, the Facebook groups. And we weren't much of a company that operated with the Facebook community very often, to be honest with you, up until maybe about a year ago, where we opened up the Inventory Lab Facebook group. And then as a result of kind of compounding discussions, they've actually invited me in February a few months ago of 2025 to lead a fireside chat with not just Amazon's leadership, but the whole API team globally, as well as the
Wow.
listing and FBA team.
And you
And
probably knew a
so
lot of those guys from back when you were there. Were any of the same crew still there?
there were a few. They were like, Yoda, you were the guy that was on North American expansion, right? I was
Right.
like, yes. But it's been so long, right? And there's
Yeah.
so many people that it's like a revolving door at
Churning
Amazon.
through.
A lot of
Yeah,
people
sure.
move to different teams. But yeah, I got a chance to meet with some old colleagues. But as a result of that, they're like, for your time, we also want to, every team wants to kind of talk to you about various seller issues and how you're using the API to support sellers. And that was the first time I was able to bring to light various issues that sellers were running into. A good example of this is the new API also meant that you couldn't print out FN SKUs or mint FN SKUs immediately, which created an immense amount of pressure for prep centers and sellers that were doing significant volume. And so I brought this issue to light. They didn't even realize that this was their API was being used this way in their old API, right? Their first response was, oh, I thought that sellers take weeks to create a listing. Why would a seller need it instantaneously? And that was the moment where I realized that somehow their brain orientation is around private label, even though we own Marketplace Pulse and it's like a research-based publication. And we find that over 2/3 of sellers are resellers.
Right.
So we know for a fact that they're optimizing their system for actually a smaller percentage of sellers.
And what portion of Amazon's catalog is reselling versus brand owned?
That's a good question. I don't have like an answer off the top of my head on that one.
The last numbers I've heard, which are a couple years old, I'm assuming we're not too far off that, is 35-40% of the catalog is resellers.
Yeah.
That's the last numbers I heard, which isn't too far. That doesn't sound crazy to you, does it? That sounds about
no. That
sound within
if
reason.
anything, might sound low.
A little low, right? So I mean, we represent a large contingent of the shelf space that's filled in the warehouse, but you're not going to see any commercials talking about, hey, we help resellers build beautiful businesses. No, they talk about the brand. The guy that launches his own honey bee wax, lip balm or whatever. Like they're highlighting that constantly. But I feel like we're the ones kind of paying the bills and holding down the fort and making sure when people hop on there to buy boring stuff that it's there. Like,
100%.
That's what we do, right?
100%. I think that's kind of like the key to like what, and you can see this, right? As an organization like Amazon grows over and over and over again, they have new people coming in place. You lose a lot of that tribal knowledge of what built the business in the first place, why it is the way it is. And now they're coming in with enforcement that I think understandably going after counterfeit claims, but accidentally going after gray market, right?
Yeah,
because
throwing baby out with the bathwater kind of stuff. Yeah.
100%. And they're optimizing for a very, very small cohort of counterfeits. But most resellers, I venture to guess 99% of resellers are not spending their time trying to counterfeit a brand, copying their IP, copying their UPC, rebuilding the packaging. Like it's like too much work. Right. Like a gray market is just way more straightforward from that perspective and being able to buy from other sources. Mm-hmm. And so going into the second point to it, not just FN SKUs, but going into counterfeit claims without test buys. I'm like, guys, Amazon, like, how is this even a possible thing? Counterfeit claim without a test. You have the item in your warehouse. Why don't you just check the item in your warehouse and find out if it's counterfeit? I'm guaranteeing you this is probably not counterfeit. And then the following enforcement to this is like, okay, to prove that this is not counterfeit, please provide an invoice. Well, I'm sorry, but like, how about your used media category? Used books is what Amazon was built on. And you are telling me that used booksellers are now needing to provide you an invoice that they don't have?
Yeah.
Because they get it from bookstores, thrift stores, like garage sales, whatever it is.
Dusty corners of warehouses, wherever, which is what makes the catalog so interesting. We're getting that inventory out of, I call it the dark, dusty corners. That's what resellers often do. And if they're punished for that activity, yeah, Amazon loses the heart of what it used to be. I love the book example. Like we've got plenty of people, myself included, like, I just don't want to sell books anymore because if I buy a bunch of used books and now suddenly they ask for an invoice, which isn't outside of the question that they might do that. Like, I don't have an invoice. It's a book, man. Like, I can have a counterfeit book. No, with textbooks, I get it. There's some stuff going on there, but yeah, it's that tightrope, that both sides have to walk to make this thing work. And as they get bigger and more corporate and there's more lawyers involved, it
becomes more difficult. Yeah. And so I had a chance to really sit down with their leadership team in February to bring these issues to light. And what came out of it, what was supposed to be a 2.5 hour meeting, turned out to be a 6 hour session.
Oh, that's awesome. I would love to be in that room, man. If you can get me in that room sometime, dude, I'll
Yeah.
come armed for bear, dude. I'll be the bad guy if you need one. But yeah, because I'm hearing all the stories firsthand, as are you. We've got a lot of the same audience, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and so thank you for doing what you're doing. And I love just hearing, I didn't know that you had done that. I love that they're listening to the voices that are, within arm's reach of the selling community, the small mom and pop businesses, that $30,000 a month business that is paying the bills for a lot of people right now. That we need advocates. So thank you for being that, man. I really appreciate the
100%.
work you're doing there.
And what's been, I think a lot of sellers are extremely jaded by seller support responses, which I don't blame them because they do seem fairly automated, is I guess maybe the nicest way to put it.
Impersonal, yeah.
By the time I met with them, so that was a Seattle meeting. They invited me to Paris to meet another set of leadership team, similar team, but they wanted to meet kind of an expanded team in Paris. And by the Paris meeting, on 4 of the top issues that I brought forward, they gave me updates on 2, which is one, the use buy box that they had changed, they changed back. So use buy box, for some reason, they were just giving the buy box to MFN for no real apparent reason, even though the quality of the book might be lower and the price might be higher, right? Brought the issue to light. They're like, okay, well, this has been resolved. And then there were issues with being able to list on used media. About 10 to 15% of items you couldn't list on. When you tried to go listing on Seller Central or an inventory lab,
Right.
it would stop you and it would just disappear from your view inventory page. And I brought this to light. I'm like, I don't know how I would deep dive this for you guys, but I can give you an example of seller IDs and ASINs that they're trying to list on that just disappears. There's no error, no nothing. And they were like, you know what? We found the issue. We're resolving this category by category. We start with vinyl. We're going to go this category, that category. By March 28th, they made a broad-based fix. And they said by end of this year, they're going to have an automated fix so that this never happens again.
That's awesome. I just love that they're listening to guys like you who serve the same audience. We serve the listeners to this show. You're serving that same community. I got to imagine a lot of the inventory lab users are people that I sold Proven Amazon course to 4 years ago, and that's their tool of choice now. Like, so our audiences overlap. I'd love to see that on a Venn diagram. Like, what is
probably almost perfect?
It's a pretty big overlap, man. It really is. We need to work together more is what I'm sitting here thinking. Like, dude, I got like 8 questions I want to ask you off the air. And I don't have the time today, but we got to meet on a regular basis, man. But well, let's make sure we cover 365 with the time we have left. We're going to have you back again. And before I do that, I probably mentioned it in the introduction as well. Your team's coming to the Proven Conference in Orlando the last 3 days of May 2025. Thank you for being a great sponsor, by the way. So thrilled you guys are going to be there with us and help make this event possible. But everyone listening to this, you need to be in Orlando. We've got scholarships still. Like, if you've never been to our event before and you're skeptical, hey, come free. Like, we want you to come experience the excitement that we're seeing right now. I think my future forecast for the next 2 to 5 years for reselling specifically on Amazon has never been brighter. I see tariffs as a positive from my vantage point. I'm seeing the evidence of it for resellers, right? Brand owners, they're getting their butts kicked in some places. You got to import right now, right? So you're seeing some of that too. But I see a very bright future. We want to talk about all that at our event. So glad you guys are coming, and you're coming personally, correct?
I am coming personally,
Awesome.
and Austin is coming, and Chrissy is coming. So
beautiful.
Austin being our community manager that's been around on all of our Facebook groups, and Chrissy, who's been leading education for Inventory Lab for years now, even prior to the acquisition, now runs education for all of ThreeColts. All 3 of us will be there. So we're super excited. Thanks for having us. And as you were rattling off how you were thinking about how reselling is going to be transformative over the next few years as like the tariffs come in. I mean, we wrote an analysis on this, and we are in total agreement with you.
Oh, beautiful. I'd love to see it. I haven't seen it yet. Anything that backs up my crazy inclinations, yeah, send it my way. Yeah, but it's just so obvious to me. If we hadn't gone through COVID, I'd be a little fuzzier on this. But to me, this is COVID 2.0 as far as the impact on reselling.
So if I know we want to get into Seller 365, but this topic is just so juicy. If the tariffs hold, it will be like COVID 2.0. So when we looked at the data for COVID, but then even prior to COVID, where reselling does really, really well is when there is an inventory imbalance or a pricing imbalance in the market. Now, there are 2 things that push both changes. One, like COVID was an extreme case where you have an inventory imbalance. If you had inventory, it turned into gold and you got to sell it, right? You got to sell
Right.
anything that you had inventory in.
Right.
Pricing imbalance comes from more online selling happening. And so therefore there are more online websites, right? The fact that there's Walmart, Target, this, that, and there are thousands, tens of thousands of different online websites now that you can buy from creates pricing imbalance or potential for pricing imbalance. Every year, the LA ports go on strike. What happens right after? Retailers go out of stock on certain items, right?
Resellers benefit.
All of a sudden, resellers are able to reshuffle and win the buy box is at a higher percent. And so we're already seeing prices spike up, and different retailers right now and different websites are increasing prices at different rates and different times than other retailers.
Right.
And so right now it's creating a pricing imbalance.
That disparity, yeah, is opportunity.
In the domestic area. And then soon to be, we're going to have an inventory imbalance if the tariffs continue upwards as brands start moving their supply chains over to Vietnam. Last week was the first week Vietnam imports surpassed China imports. Isn't that crazy?
Really? No
First time ever.
way. No
And so
way. I would have thought that we were still, I mean, I would have thought it would take a decade for that to happen.
it happened literally.
Vietnam had more imports than China
Yeah.
total.
Yeah.
Holy cow. How'd they fit it all on?
That's what I mean is I think part of it is like, obviously there's demand on the Vietnam side, but then there's
Sure.
also just a huge collapse in orders from China that got shipped
China's
over
getting their
because
butt kicked right now. And I would, not to get too political, but they had it coming, man, from my vantage point. I sold Microsoft software in the 90s, and it was well known in the entire software licensing arena that 95+% of all software being run in China was pirated.
Oh, wow.
They didn't pay for anything. They didn't pay a dime. You had major corporations over there with, 1 million employees running Microsoft at scale, free.
That
No
is,
enforce. Like who's gonna enforce it? What are you gonna do? You're gonna send some tanks and make us pay? No, we'll pirate the software, figure it out, get some pirated keys, and run it on our. Yeah, like so. China kind of had it coming. That's just that's as political as I'll get. But it's a painful thing right now for a lot of people, and I understand that. And I hope it ends soon. But China deserved a bit of a punch on this. So wow,
and I think
good
that's
for
going to
Vietnam,
create an
man.
inventory imbalance as a result, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So right now they have inventory to sell, but as soon as that inventory goes out and all of a sudden it creates this imbalance across the board, once again, your inventory is just going to sell for a higher value in the future state.
Yeah, and I mean the stuff sitting on the store shelves, which are going to have a little less on them. When the shelves start looking a little thin, opportunity, right? That's my clean way of saying it. The shelves look a little thin. Yeah, you could be making a lot of money right now, and that's what happened during COVID. We're still kind of coming out of that whole supply chain disruption, and here we are now with tariffs. Like, yeah, COVID 2.0. I should probably trademark it because I think, man, that's what's coming. That's what if it's not already here.
No, it's definitely coming, and I'll definitely send over the article that I wrote up last week.
Absolutely,
on specifically.
I'll share it I'll stick it in the show notes so the listeners can check that out as well. All right, man. Well, let's talk about Seller 365. Fill me in. What you got going on there?
So in our history, we acquired dozens of different applications. Like we mentioned, Tactical Arbitrage, Inventory Lab, Feedback Whiz. We built in-house Smart Repricer and a few others. And what we wanted to do as our vision was always to bundle these products and provide it for an extremely low price to sellers. When I was at Amazon, I saw that historically speaking, that Amazon was going to continue to increase its fees. How do we make it more affordable for the seller to be able to run their business and make sustainable income long term? And I've always believed that the role of software is deflationary. We should make things cheaper, easier, and faster for our customers to operate. And so that's what we did with Seller 365 was we integrated them, provided it for one low price at $69 a month. You have 10 different applications. And we actually are going to be adding in new applications that we've acquired recently into this bundle at no additional cost for Walmart functionality, multi-channel functionality. And so we're super excited about bringing that forward. But this has been like a multi-year plan in the making that we're finally able to pull together. It took the whole company and their effort and their energy over the last 4 months to really get this out the door. And in the first couple of months, it's already become one of our top 2 largest products for the business. And so we've been super excited about bringing this forward and being able to help sellers. And that's what Seller 365
How can people check it out if they want to go see?
They can go to ThreeColts.com and it's right there on the front page and they can get started with this. And obviously, we will be at the Proven Conference, and we'll be talking to sellers about Seller 365, giving giveaways on this, as well as having best practices. A good example of this is that a lot of sellers run into feedback. They want to improve their feedback score. And oftentimes, the only way to do this is to request the feedback button on Seller Central after an order is made, right? This is the only compliant way to do this. And the only way to really increase it is by just selling more. But you do need to click that button, and we see more responses when you click that button. But it turns out when you look at the data for Feedback Wiz, that if you automate the feedback request 11 to 15 days after the order is shipped, the likelihood of a 5-star review is higher. Because what happens is that within the first 0 to 10 days, if they return it or ask for a refund, you do not want to request a review from these buyers. They're obviously not going to give you a 5-star review because they've returned the item and or requested a refund. Right. So 11 to 15 days becomes a sweet spot of when you want to request this review because they've kept the item and they're like, okay, hey, this works. We want to leave a review. Now, if you wait too long, they've forgotten about the item that they bought. They probably bought like a dozen other items in the meantime. So they completely forget about it. And so the likelihood of them even submitting a review goes down. And so these are the types of best practices that we want to bring for the Proven Conference coming up in a month's time.
Excellent. Yeah. And we'll have live stream as well for those who can't make it to Orlando the last 3 days of May 2025. So get over to theprovenconference.com. Check it out. You guys are prominently placed as a great sponsor this year, and you're going to bring some great content as well. Yeah, I can't wait to see the sessions. I think you're going to be a popular dude now. After this podcast popping out right before the event, you're going to have a lot of people wanting to talk to you at this event. Come ready, man, to stay up late and get up early. It's going to be a blast. But
I'm excited.
Man, well, was there anything else that you were wanting to get out to the audience today, to the listeners? Anything else that you see coming or topics that you wish we'd have hit today? I don't want to wrap up prematurely if you had anything else you want to hit.
I'm sure we can go on for hours, Jim.
Oh, we definitely could, man. I've got 3 things on my list for when the recording's over.
So. Yeah, sounds good. But no, thanks for having me on. I mean, obviously for me, this is the second time, so I'm still new to this, and thanks for having me on and letting me share my story.
No, I mean, one of the jobs you got as the leader of an organization of 500 people, man, that just blows my mind, is you got to be the spokesperson who can articulately and cleanly represent the vision of what you guys are doing. And you did brilliant. I can't believe you've only been on a couple podcasts, man. It's like you're an old pro. I read a book not too long ago that said leadership at scale is saying the same things over and over again with passion, basically.
And the
right?
only
you find yourself doing that, right?
Is that you're either a politician or you actually love what you do, you know?
Oh,
and neither of us are politicians here, so.
You know, I equate it to it's a similar. There's going to be days where you just don't feel like it, but you still got to represent it. And I'm sure you've had those days, right? You still got to represent with passion what you stand for. You feel it in your heart, but you're not feeling it that day, right? I equate it to a very similar skill set that I think sometimes musicians must have. Like, you know, you go to a good concert and you're hearing this band, and the good bands make us feel like they're having a good time up there, right? Those are the bands we love. But they've sung that song 1,500 times. Surely part of them is like, seriously, gotta do this again. But to do it with passion and love, like that's what it's like to be a CEO. That's what it's like to play at the level that, you know, maybe you only have 4 employees. It's the same thing. You've got to bring it. You got to believe it. You got to speak from the heart. You're going to be saying the same things over and over and over again. It's setting the direction of your organization. You're doing it brilliantly, man. I'm a big fan. I can't wait for your book. When are you going to write a book?
Yeah, I'm far away from it. I'm far away.
Not as far as you might think, man. I think you should crank one out. I'm just adding that to my list right now. I'm going to push you into writing a book, man, because you got a good one in you. I can just tell. Yoda Yee, man. Great hanging out with my friend. I'm going to see you here very shortly. The end of May is coming at us fast, especially when people hear this episode. We'll get it out in time for people to hopefully make some plans if they haven't yet to join us at the conference. So, all right, man. Well, I think I'll cut it off here. Good conversation. Thanks for hanging out with me today, buddy.
Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. Hey, for the listeners today, this is an unusual unusual episode. That's what I meant to say. Most of our episodes are interviews with successful students from our community who are using tools like what Yoda described today. So if you want to scroll back in time and hear some motivational, encouraging, inspirational, real stories of real people building real businesses, that's what our show primarily is. But I love to bring on great leaders from our industry, people who are building the tools, who are equipping us for success. And that's what we did today. So thanks for being a part of our show. We'll have another great episode for you very soon.